Thanks, Patrick. Okay, thanks everyone. So my name is Jennifer Lee. I'm going to present a very small part of my postdoc project, which was focused on demonstrator projects for digital fabrication in AEC. I'm going to look at problem framing, methodology and insights, and then definition of a demonstrator project for Dfab in AEC. And alongside that, I'll just kind of talk about why this very small project, this very small piece of the project is really important. So problem framing, first I'll define digital fabrication, the context for what we're doing, the research objective, and then we'll move on to the next stages. So digital fabrication is considered a fabrication or building process driven by the seamless conversion of design and engineering data into fabrication code for digitally controlled tools. So the idea is you feed data into a computer, then you just leave the computer to do the work for yourself and to control robots on site or whatever technology it is that you're working with. So for the context of the study, AEC is the world's largest industry by GDP, but it ranks lowest in productivity and digitalization. This is nothing new. We all know this. We've all heard this several times, but it's not changing anytime soon. Unlike manufacturing, AEC involves unique site conditions, stakeholder requirements, and these are some of the challenges as to why we're not moving more into productivity and digitalization. Dfab is considered one of the foundational building blocks for realizing 4.0, and that's why it's important to really understand what we can do with demonstrator projects. So there's an industry gap. The key problem is around this lack of adoption. So Dfab is experiencing stagnant adoption because of this large gap between research feasibility and industry adoption. And this is driven by a number of social technical factors. So existing business models, organizational structures, they're not sufficient. They're not open to having Dfab technologies absorbed into their organizations and processes and practices. So what we need is a more kind of system level thinking to be able to adopt Dfab technologies. The idea is that demonstrator projects can be a bridge to close this gap. So we can see things like the MX3D bridge that was positioned in Amsterdam in the red light district was a 3D printed steel bridge. And here we see Dfab House, which is a case study that I've applied for my kind of wider project as transition vehicles to help people understand what the technology is, what its capabilities are, and how we can push beyond the current challenges of adoption. Despite that, demonstrators are currently discussed as failing in that facilitation of adoption. And we believe that that is as a result of not being kind of really fully understood about what they are, how they can be used, what value they add, and so on. So my wider project is focusing on how we can create a methodology for for use of demonstrators to transition technologies from research into industry and commercialization. This presentation here is about the very first start of that, which is defining what that actually means. What is a demonstrator project? So currently we have no unified definition. We need more clarity to understand what it is. And I'll show you some of some of the literature that it looked at was really not clear about specifically what a demonstrator is. Often terms are used interchangeably. We hear about prototypes and demonstrators being talked about in the same sentence. We have a prototype demonstrator. And depending on your definition, where you come from, which perspective, they're actually two very different things. They have different purposes, different roles within the kind of trajectory of technology transformation. So what we're going to do with this research is provide a comprehensive definition to aid understanding of a demonstrator's philosophical and practical role. I'm not using the word here that we're providing a unified definition because that's not for me to say whether it becomes a unified definition. We will provide a comprehensive definition that we believe encompasses everything that is needed. And then it would be for the community to decide whether to adopt that as a unified definition. So what this does is that it provides some kind of formal distinction to real world context and understand how the phenomenon, in this case, demonstrator projects, what it is, what's the context, and how it can be acted upon. So methodology, I'm going to go through quickly because I already had my 2 minutes warning. I think the timing is a bit off here. Literature review, case study. So I did a literature review, found a number of definitions across various adjacent sectors to construction because we had only one in literature. Then I used Dfab House as a case study to look at what they define as a demonstrated project. And the results of this, I'm going to skip to this here. So through thematic analysis, a number of items were identified, and these were then taken as the key things that a demonstrator represents and put into this definition. So the proposed definition is digital fabricated demonstrated projects in AEC are finite endeavors. So there are a specific point in time to materialize maturity and readiness of a novel technology, method, or process. So it's not just about the technology, but it's also about methods and processes. Through production and testing of a functional artifact at full scale, that's key, that this demonstrator has to be done at full scale and replicated to replicate a real world environment. So it's non-lab based and it's in a construction specific environment. A demonstrator spans the boundaries of research and industry to generate knowledge of technical and social feasibility for active communication and dissemination to the parties beyond the project team. And the goal is around informing of industry of the potentials of Dfab, but also attracting investment for future development to push that drive for commercialization. So what does that mean? What happens going forward? Such a definition, if it is adopted, would provide consistency for Dfab as a viable stage for demonstrators for adoption of Dfab in that trajectory of technology development. It provides a holistic view of what happens before and after. Limitations that we had a small sample skewed towards academia. We're going to push for more. I have actually done more industry interviews since then, and this will feed into the longer study. So the other study is looking more at actually creating the methodology. So this is just that kind of initial part of it. So I think probably I'm over time now, so I will end there and happy to answer any questions, but you can also connect with me either via email or follow me on LinkedIn or connect with me there.